So, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, whatever it is for you. I'm just going to say a little bit this morning about this idea of the nigredo, which is the first kind of stage of the alchemical process. I say it's the first stage, actually. Of course, before that comes a lot of preparation. And so far, in a way, we've been working with that preparation of trying to get a sense of the energetic nature of our body and feeling into that. Of course, I should stress right from the beginning that these different processes can't really be forced or made to happen. Yeah. But what we can be fairly sure of is that if we meditate for any length of time, at some point we will enter something that we could call a nigredo state. From an actual alchemical point of view, insofar as they were working with, let's say, for example, metals, like trying to transform lead into gold, which might seem like quite a foolish undertaking. And of course, given our modern knowledge of metals, we can see it was an impossibility. But they had this belief that everything in the world had a kind of teleological was moving towards its own perfection. So they thought that the perfect metal was gold, and all other metals were gradually moving towards that state of perfection. Although left to their own devices buried in the earth, this might take thousands, millions of years. So what they thought they were trying to do was to sort of speed up this transformation. Yeah. And the first stage of this was to sort of, well, it's a bit complicated because actually they weren't the first. What they were trying to do actually was to bring about a substance, or we'll call it a substance. They call it had various names, but this philosophical stone, which actually became the agent of transformation. But anyway, the first thing that had to happen was that things had to be kind of reduced back to their primal state. Yeah. And of course, we get this idea within lots of systems. For a system to change, for something to really change, it has to go through a period of disequilibrium. It has to go into kind of a chaotic state. Within our own tradition, this could be equivalent. Well, within most spiritual traditions, you get this dark night of the soul, or you get this point where things start to break down, and we experience this experience will vary from person to person. For some people, it'll be a kind of gradual and not particularly dramatic experience. For other people, it might be quite dramatic, where our normal sense, our normal structure, if you like, of our consciousness starts to disintegrate and break down, and therefore it can be reformed. It can come in a different way. this so I think the value of having this sort of perspective is that it perhaps gives. Sorry about that. Hopefully you didn't hear that ringing. Some reason I can't, even though my iPad's on Do Not Disturb, it was ringing. I think it probably just cut off the sound here, so I just dropped out hopefully for a few moments rather than you hearing it go off. Anyway, yeah, so I think sometimes when we take up a practice like meditation, we expect our experience to be sort of increasingly kind of positive. So when something happens, it either inside or outside of meditation is difficult, psychologically difficult, emotionally difficult. We think there's something wrong, rather than understanding that it's actually part of the process that we're involved with. Yeah. I think in particular, understanding that this Nigrida, or this breaking down, can be a opportunity for radical transformation is very sort of helpful if we can hold on to that, if we can understand that. So none of us are going to go, well, probably very few of us, if any of us, are going to go through life without some very difficult periods in our life. You know, it might be brought about by illness, it might be brought about by having your heart broken, or all sorts of different things. And while these things are very difficult for us, they also offer us a particular opportunity. So that's a possibility, because when these events are strong events, because our normal sense of ourselves is challenged and starts to dissolve to some degree or other. And this, as I say, seems to be a kind of necessary part of this, sort of this spiritual process. So we get this in the story of the Buddha in a number of ways. We get it after his period of ascetic practice, where we're told he brings himself very close to death. And then he has this experience of nearly drowning in a river, and realizing that he needs to start off again in a different way. And we also have it in the actual story of the enlightenment, when he's assailed by the forces of Mara. Yeah. So before he actually makes this sort of final breakthrough, there's this assault on him, this sort of psychic assault. But what's happened at that point in his life is he's got to such a degree of practice that he's able to just meet this with love, meet this with compassion. So rather than reacting to it or trying to get away from it, he simply meets it with love. And in a way, though this seems quite simplistic, this is really the basic methodology of meditation. What we're trying to do is establish enough kind of stability, which in this way of working, the stability is expressed through the physical, energetic posture. So we're releasing the kind of holding that we've got in the body, and holding ourselves in such a way that there's an energetic freedom. So when things happen, they can actually kind of move through us. They don't kind of get stuck. But of course, this takes a lot of practice. It's not necessarily easy to sit with these difficult states that we might have, but if we can experientially start to learn that actually these transformations can happen quite I had this experience, it's quite a long time ago now, I suppose it's about must be over 20 years ago now, that when I was living in America, a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, I won't go into the whole story because it's quite a lot, but she'd already had two twins. She had two twins, young twins, which were born over 3 months premature. They survived. She had preeclampsia when she was pregnant, and they had to deliver the twins. And they were, you know, in intensive care hospital for over 3 months. And of course, that was a very kind of traumatic experience for her. And then she got pregnant again, and she had a perfectly normal pregnancy. But the child was stillborn. This was kind of quite a devastating experience for her. Anyway, we had this little, she asked me to participate in a kind of ritual around this stillbirth. And it was very intense, you might imagine, it was a very kind of intense situation. And during this ritual, I was kind of overwhelmed with grief, really, you know, this huge amount of grief. And I just sat with her. We were in a meditative, I was in a meditative kind of posture, and I just sat with her, and I had this experience of this grief just transforming into bliss. It's very physical, very strong physical experience, you know. And I just mention that because in order for things to change, we have to relax into them. And I think our tendency, well, of course, our tendency quite naturally is to try and move away from or avoid these experiences. And to some extent, we can use meditation to do this. We can actually use meditation as a kind of avoidance. And this happens when our meditation is primarily kind of cognitive in nature. Yeah, it's primarily we're primarily working through the will, through our will, and we're sort of blocking off these experiences that we find uncomfortable or difficult. They call this in modern, well, I don't like this term myself, but they started calling them a spiritual bypass. You come across this phrase in various books of meditation that talk about spiritual bypass. And this is because they found through, you know, we've got a particular view of meditation, haven't we, which has been very strongly coloured by the Western understanding of psychology, which is not necessarily the same as the traditional Buddhist understanding, but they found that people that have been practicing for many years still don't seem to have, at some point that practice breaks down and they seem to psychologically or emotionally not really have addressed fundamental issues. I think there's two things about that. One is that I'm not sure that we can necessarily address all of our fundamental issues through meditation. That's one thing. I think sometimes, of course, we need other sorts of help and support in order to do that. But also, it's something to do with the way we're meditating, the way we're meditating. And it seems to be that what's happening really is that we're only meditating with quite a small part of our psyche, if you like. Yes, we are learning to sort of control our conscious mind to some extent, but under that, everything just remains the same. And at some point, that will break down for us, yeah. So this idea of Nigredo is really, you get this, a good example of someone, I mean, she doesn't use these terms, but Pema Chodron, when we're talking about leaning into things, isn't it? How we need to learn to lean into our experience rather than trying to sort of ascend above it or avoid it in some way. Of course, this isn't an easy thing to do, and this is, in a way, our practice. We can see it's a difficult practice that we get to the point of Siddhartha when, he was assailed by all these different demonic forces, was able to just open to them with love. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's something we can slowly learn to do. And the way we're trying to do this, or one of the ways we can try and do this, is just that we learn to depend not upon our will as such, but upon the physical posture that we take, the physical attitude that we take. We're trying to find a way of sitting that expresses love. The posture itself expresses love. The posture itself is always moving towards softening and opening. And so when this material comes up, it's allowed to move, it's allowed to pass through us. So this isn't really dissimilar. Chodron Trungpa is quite good with this, isn't he? When he's always talking about just opening, just open, just open, just open, just relax, just open. We get this a lot in Dzogchen and Mahamudra approaches to meditation. But in order to do this, first there has to be quite a strong relationship with our physical, energetic body. And we have to be able to maintain that. So most of the work is really preparation. Yeah. And we can't make, or we shouldn't even want to force these other alchemical stages, particularly the first stage of Nigredo. But if over the years we've learned to meditate with increasing kind of intimacy and sensitivity towards our own unconscious elements, which, as I say, we're doing primarily through attending to feeling, sensations, and the energy in the body. If we practice that enough, when something happens in our life or when these states do arise, we will have the opportunity to open to them rather than turn away from, rather than try and avoid them. So most of our work is always preparation, and when things come, they come. You know, maybe for some of us, it's never going to be very dramatic. For other people, it might be quite dramatic. So on this home retreat, the laying down that we're doing is encouraging, not necessarily encouraging the greedo states, the dark, difficult states, not necessarily encouraging that, but encouraging just relaxing, just letting go. So we need to be able to sort of relax our normal ego consciousness for these processes to be able to happen. We can't control these processes. It's quite interesting that the alchemists, this is another thing I like about the alchemists. They had to repeat these operations again and again and again. And they understood their role really as just paying close and careful attention to what was going on. You know, that really was their role. And our conscious role as meditators is really just that, you know, to pay, well, let's use the word tender, you know, a sort of tender, loving watch on what's happening. We're not trying to make anything happen. We're not trying to force something to happen. But we are attending with love and care for what's happening. And we're also building into our life enough space, enough time, enough openness for these sort of things to take place if they need to take place. I was thinking this morning, actually, it's quite interesting in the last, however long it's been, 10, 11 months of this so-called pandemic. It's interesting enough, of course, pandemic comes from the word Pan, the god Pan, which means who we also get the word panic from. You know. Anyway, that's by the by, but it's interesting that it's associated with this goat-footed god of nature, who's always occupied a sort of, he's a bit disturbing, he's a bit frightening. When we encounter Pan, he's quite frightening, quite chaotic. Anyway, but what I was going to say, it's quite interesting that we could say that these Nigredo states happen individually to us, you know, when we suffer grief, or heartbreak, or illness, or we begin to uncover kind of trauma that's being pushed down because we didn't have the resources to deal with it at the time it happened, or we didn't have the support, etc., etc. They happen individually. They also perhaps happen collectively. And you could say that we've been in a kind of collective Nigredo state for the last year or so now. But while that obviously is not on the surface positive at all, if we understand an Nigredo in an alchemical sense, it also offers great opportunity. So all of our lives, or most of our lives, to some degree or another, have been sort of interrupted. There has been a breakdown in our normal life. The normal habitual patterns of our life have been interrupted. And although we might find this very difficult, it also offers a possibility, whether we're going to be able to take it collectively or not, we'll have to wait and see. But it offers a possibility of change. It offers a possibility of reorganizing, not just going back to the old way of living, the old way of conducting our lives, but it offers a possibility of reorganizing in a different way. We saw this, didn't we, after the Second World War in England, anyway, with the establishment of the health service and a whole sort of change in the way we understood how we needed to look after each other, how society needed to be organized, coming out of the trauma of the Second World War. So in a way, we've got another opportunity now, as we come out of this pandemic, not just to go back to our old way of living, our old way of being. And perhaps us, insofar as that maybe there's a special responsibility for people that are already engaged in some kind of spiritual practice, to make sure that we take that opportunity, that we allow what's happened to activate us in a particular way, and it's a funny thing, isn't it? These days, I am more and more aware that and of course this is such basic Buddhism, is there in the Dhammapada, isn't it? That really the only way we can meet things is with love, Anything else is not really any use to us. Yeah. How that manifests itself, of course, is, there has to be kind of action, doesn't there? But our basic response to our own difficulties and the difficulties of other people has to be love, really, if we want things to change. And this is I think at the core of most of our spiritual practice. The core thing is how do we learn to really love ourselves, deeply cherish ourselves. Of course, this isn't a cherishing of our egos. It isn't a cherishing of ourselves as opposed to other people. But it's a way of loving ourselves, which is also a way of loving the world, loving life itself. So and I think actually this is the core of our practice. And of course, this is the emotional content of insight. Yeah. I think we quite often think of insight quite conceptually, but its emotional or energetic underpinning is love. I'm thinking, as I'm saying this, that lovely Leonard Cohen song came to mind. That one where it says, "Ring the bells that still will ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. But these nigredo states, in a way, are cracking an opening where we can let the light in, the possibility of a light coming in. You know. Anyway, I hope that gives you a little bit of a sense of what we're trying to do here. It's all ridiculously sort of simple on some level. We're trying to relax. Sounds ridiculously simple, doesn't it? We're just trying to relax into our deeper self in the confidence that actually that's not some kind of self-indulgent activity, but this relaxing into the heart of ourselves, into the core of ourselves, will bring us into alignment with reality. Reality isn't something outside of ourselves. Of course, it is something outside of ourselves, but it's not outside of ourselves as opposed to inside of ourselves. Yeah. And the closest bit of reality to us is us. So if we want to see the nature, the true nature of things, we have to find that in ourselves. Yeah, it's a bit like this whole, Buddhism emphasizes the pivotal experience of accepting and understanding. It's negatively put, it says impermanence. Yeah. So much of our suffering is caused by trying to hold on to how things are, how we would like things to be. And actually, whether we like it or not, everything changes. Yeah. And it's quite easy to kind of romanticize impermanence, because actually, of course, beauty and impermanence are interdependent. And we can go outside in the autumn and see how beautiful it looks as the leaves turn and the seasons change into impermanence. So lovely. And we can appreciate that element of impermanence. But of course, what's closest to us, what's closest to our heart, of course, is our own impermanence. Our aging, our loss, our impermanence. So we're trying to relax into ourselves in order to relax into the nature of reality itself. Because your body, your psyche, the nearest part of reality, there's a bit of reality that potentially you can be most intimate and loving towards. And when you manage to do that, of course, that will open out into the world. If you really learn to love yourself in this way, which means to accept yourself with tenderness and awareness and openness and kindness, just to accept. You don't have to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect in that sense of perfection, which is, of course, implies permanence. But you can be perfect in a different sort of way of just fully accepting. It doesn't mean we don't try. It doesn't mean we don't make an effort. Indeed, quite the opposite, because it's a tremendous effort to truly meet ourselves with love and openness and compassion. Okay, well, that's enough talking, eh? So we'll start off with a little meditation. So get yourself so comfortable. Okay, so I just gotta, while you do that, I'll be back in just a minute. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do, but we'll see what happens. Eh? So you might want to take one or two slightly deeper breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. You might make a bit of a sound in the out breath, whatever feels appropriate for you. Just let the face relax. Let the breath just settle back down. Have a sense of what's above us, distance between the crown of our head and the ceiling of the room we're sitting in, and then remembering that above the house or flat or wherever it is we are, it's just the sky, open sky, kind of open dimension of being. Just see if you can let the sky activate you in whatever way it does. And then going down to the parts of your body in contact with the floor, the cushion, whatever it is you're sitting on. Using those physical sensations in the body, those sensations of contact, is to encourage the awareness down into your seat. And then some sense of the earth under you, deep, broad, supportive, holding you, taking your weight. And just some sense of how the world supports you moment to moment on a very simple level. You're just intimately involved with the world. Just the act of breathing in and breathing out. This kind of entanglement with the world, isn't it? Let alone all the other things that the world offers us. Food, water, shelter, everything comes in one way or the other from the earth, isn't it? So we can only trust the world as it is, which of course, as we all know, as practicing Buddhists, marked by the lakshanas, the marks of reality. Let the face relax a bit more. So we'll come up to the heart from below just to make sure that the heart feels connected back down to the root and to the earth. So you can just very gently, as you breathe in and out, probably on the in-breath, just slowly kind of moving up from your root, which is imagined between the anus and the genitals there, the perineum. So just slowly becoming aware of the base, the root, pelvic floor. You might find a little bit of movement down there in the pelvic floor if you're attentive. If you breathe in and out, your own way, just gently imagine drawing up earth energy, up what we could call a central channel. Maybe just in front or encompassing the spine. So we're aware of the base and then the genitals. All of these, traditionally, all of these centers have their own kind of consciousness. Their own kind of perspective. And they connect us to the world in different ways. So kind of stand for different points in our psychological development. So just slowly breathing up, being aware of what's below the heart, through the whole kind of sometimes referred to as yin space of the digestive region. Towards the Dantian or navel center of the higher. And up to the heart center, which we can include the kind of lungs, the whole complex of the heart and the lungs. Lungs sort of drape the heart either side, don't they? So as we breathe in as a natural movement towards the heart area, in breath kind of takes us down there. And then let's come in from the top, sort of come up from the bottom to the heart. Let's go down to the heart from above. So we've got the sky above us, the light, if we're depending where we are. But wherever you are, it doesn't really matter. Just kind of just imagining playfully. You don't have to force anything to happen. You don't have to take any of this to literally for it to be effective. So we're just drawing down now the energy of the sky, what's above, down through the crown chakra. Maybe as it comes in through the crown, it can have a kind of relaxing, softening effect on the brain there. Just let you relax the scalp and then coming in towards the brow center. Relax in the back of the head, base of the skull. It comes in nice. I'm imagining it as a nice kind of golden light coming in, but whatever it is for you, that's fine. Might be just a sense of spaciousness, possibility, potential. It's kind of opening up through the throat, to the heart. So we're just trying to get a sense of the heart, which within this kind of energy system is the middle ruling, so the central controlling would be the wrong word, but the rest of the kind of psycho-energetic body should be sort of in relationship to the heart. The heart's at the center of it, at the heart of it. And insofar as that's the case, the new self, if you like, the new consciousness can be understood as being born there in the heart. Or we can understand that what we're trying to do is get everything in relationship to the heart. The heart becomes the ruling center of our being. In alchemy, we get this idea of the sacred or divine marriage taking place in the heart. Where dualism, if you like, the king and queen, they get a sacred marriage takes place in the chamber of the heart, as it were. Maybe we'll get time to talk about the heart a bit more, but we can understand perhaps this is the overcoming of separation, of dualism happens in the heart center. Nice soft face as we do this. So as you breathe in, just imagine these two complementary energies, the sky energy, sometimes understood as a sort of masculine energy, coming down from below, so it's coming down from above, and the earth energy, sometimes understood as a kind of divine feminine coming up from below. And sort of mingling in the heart area. And then maybe one keeps on going down. So kind of cross over, so you're kind of letting the earth energy go up to the crown and the sky energy go down to the base. If that makes any sense. just a way of imagining your body, your breathing, your psyche, if you like. So we're just kind of breathing the heart, having it open to the sky and supported by the earth. So what I want us to do now is just to find a voice, a kind of internal voice, and actually the tone of the voice is more important than the actual words you might use. So we're looking for a voice which is unconditionally loving, unconditionally kind and loving. And then if we can find that voice, the voice we use as meditators, this internal voice that we use as meditators is very important. We've kind of got to find this other center in ourselves. So we're trying to find a voice, this kind of internal voice that we can come into relationship with. And then see, just sort of allow this voice to say, like in the first stage of the Metta Bhavana, see if we can find see what words it wants to say. Words of encouragement and love towards yourself. May I learn to love myself deeply. May I become tender, intimate, and loving towards myself. Whatever words you wish, just a few simple words imagined in this voice which is unconditionally loving, unconditionally accepting. Might be just a feeling, of course, it doesn't necessarily, but if you think it's quite nice to find this inner voice. I'll just sit with that for a while, just trying to stay with the heart center. Allowing the kind of heart energy to move out from the center into the whole of the body. As the ruling center in the body, it's sometimes likened to the sun and the heart. Everything coming into constellating around the sun. Soft face, just really soften. Let go in the legs. Gently breathing the heart. May my heart open. The heart's got many qualities, not just love. It's also the seat of courage, isn't it? Alchemically, there's a green lion in the heart. May I find the courage to open the heart. just softening the effort you're making. If you're making any effort, just softening. Still aware of the breath, your breathing body and your heart. See what happens if you just kind of trust the heart. See what happens if you just kind of stop trying to manipulate or control your experience, but just stay breathing with your heart. Remembering that the heart's language is feeling, an image rather than an argument or an irrational. Just stay with the feeling of your heart in the center of you as you breathe in and out. It's longing to open. That lovely little Anis Nin poem, Risk. So one day the time came when the risk it took to stay tight as a bud was more painful than the risk it took to bloom. So whatever we do, there's a risk, isn't there? But what would it be to risk opening more fully? As usual, just take your time, you're ready, and move from your sitting to your resting posture, your own time, no rush, make yourselves comfortable. Just laying still. Taking a few moments just to come back to yourself, physical body, remembering your limbs to your torso, your head to your trunk, sort of gathering yourself perhaps to the heart. And just remembering anything that might have happened when you've been laying down. And then when you're ready, carefully as possible, moving from your laying, resting position back to your meditation posture. So just re-establishing the posture, taking your time to feel connected, in place. We'll just have a period of just sitting. So here we're just using the breath and the posture to give structure. And we're just relaxing within that. structure of the posture and the breath. And no special state of mind to be achieved outside of the posture. The posture is to have the right state of mind. If I can remember this come to mind, we used it for quite a while, but anyway, this is the kindness by Naomi Sayadaw. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go. You know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking that the bus will never stop. Passengers eating chicken and maize will stare out the windows forever. Before you know the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel to where the Indian in the white poncho lays dead by the side of the road. You must see how he could be you, how he too was someone that traveled through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness is the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. Speak to it till your voice catches the threads and you see the size of the cloth. And then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the world to post letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head in the crowd and says, "It is I you have been looking for," and goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. So just sitting. And in about 20 minutes. kindness. Or you know what kindness really is. You must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like thought in a weakened rock. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking that the bus will never stop. The passengers eating chicken and maize will stare out the windows forever. Before you know the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel to where the Indian in the white poncho lay dead by the side of the road. You must see how he could be you, how he too was someone that travelled through the night with plans and the simple grace that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the world to post letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that rises its head from the crowd of the world and says, "It is I you have been looking for," and goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. I'm not absolutely sure what the time is. I'm having trouble seeing my watch phone thing. But anyway, I'm pretty sure it's probably about right. So we'll leave it there for this morning and hopefully see you later.
Thank you.